In the silence between heartbeats, your hands hold the keys to forces that shaped civilizations and toppled empires. Welcome, seekers of hidden truth. Today we venture into one of humanity's most guarded secrets, the mystical art of invoking elemental fire through the sacred geometry of our hands. For millennia, this knowledge has been whispered only within the inner circles of mystery schools, passed down through bloodlines of initiates who understood that our hands are not merely flesh and bone, but living conduits to the very essence of creation itself. What you are about to discover has been deliberately concealed from the masses, not out of malice, but because this power demands respect, understanding, and spiritual maturity. The ancient masters knew that fire, the first element gifted to humanity by Prometheus, carries within it the dual nature of creation and destruction, illumination and consumption. The hand that can heal can also harm. The gesture that can bless can also curse. Today, I will reveal to you the sacred hand ritual that connects you directly to the primordial fire that burns at the heart of existence. This is not mere symbolism or psychological theater. This is practical theurgy, the art of divine working that transforms both the operator and their reality. By the end of this journey, you will possess knowledge that can ignite the dormant flames within your spiritual centers, awaken your inner alchemical furnace, and establish a conscious relationship with the elemental realm of fire. But be warned, once you kindle this flame, there is no returning to the darkness of ignorance. Are you prepared to become a keeper of the sacred fire? To understand the profound power we are about to unlock, we must first trace the golden thread of this wisdom back to its primordial sources. The art of hand mysticism, known in esoteric circles as chiromancy in its divinatory aspect and chirotheurgy in its operative form, emerges from the very dawn of human consciousness. The Egyptian foundation. In the sacred halls of ancient Egypt, the priesthood of Ra understood that the human hand mirrors the structure of creation itself. The pyramid texts, among humanity's oldest religious writings, contain cryptic references to the hand of Atum, the primordial deity who, through his divine gesture, brought forth the first flame that illuminated the void. The hieroglyph for hand appears consistently alongside symbols of fire and solar power, revealing a connection that modern scholars have only begun to grasp. Within the Temple of Edfu, initiates of the higher mysteries were taught that each finger corresponded to one of the 5 elements, with the thumb, the opposing digit, representing the divine spark that could command and direct the others. Fire, associated with the index finger, was considered the most accessible, yet most dangerous of the elemental forces. The ritual postures depicted in tomb paintings show priests with specific hand configurations during solar invocations, their fingers arranged in patterns that we now recognize as sophisticated energy manipulation techniques. The Hermetic tradition. As above, so below. This fundamental axiom of Hermes Trismegistus reveals the deeper truth of hand mysticism. The Hermetic philosophers of Alexandria understood that the microcosm of the human body reflects the macrocosm of the universe, and nowhere is this more evident than in the hands. The legendary Emerald Tablet speaks of the operation of the sun and moon being completed by the hands of the wise, referring not merely to alchemical procedures, but to the direct manipulation of cosmic forces through specific gestures. In the medieval manuscript known as the Clavicula Salomonis, the Key of Solomon, we find detailed instructions for what the text calls the gesture of Ignis, a hand position capable of commanding the salamanders, the elemental spirits of fire. These were not mere superstitions, but coded instructions for practices that required years of preparation and purification. The great Cornelius Agrippa, in his 3 books of occult philosophy, dedicates an entire chapter to what he terms the celestial language of the hands. He describes how each finger connects to specific planetary intelligences, with the index finger serving as the conduit for Mars and the Sun, the classical rulers of fire. Agrippa's contemporaries, the Rosicrucians, further developed these concepts, creating an entire system of hand-based theurgy that they called the silent speech of the adepts. The Kabbalistic mysteries. Within the sacred chambers of Kabbalistic study, the hand takes on even deeper significance. The Hebrew word for hand, yad, carries a numerical value of 14, the same as the word for beloved, revealing the intimate relationship between divine touch and divine love. The Zohar, that supreme text of mystical Judaism, describes how the Shekinah, the divine presence, can be drawn down through specific configurations of the hands during sacred rituals. The Kabbalistic tree of life itself is mapped onto the human hand by advanced practitioners, with each finger and palm section corresponding to specific Sephiroth. The index finger, aligned with Geburah, the sphere of divine severity and fire, becomes the focal point for invoking the destructive and purifying aspects of the divine flame. Masters of this tradition taught that proper hand positioning during prayer and meditation could literally open gateways between the physical and spiritual realms. Transmission through the ages. This knowledge was carefully preserved through the persecution of the Dark Ages within various initiatic orders. The Knights Templar, during their time in the Holy Land, encountered Arab mystics who had preserved elements of the ancient fire rituals. These teachings were later integrated into the Western mystery tradition through the work of scholars like Marsilio Ficino and Pico della Mirandola during the Renaissance. The alchemical laboratories of medieval Europe were places where these hand rituals were practiced, alongside the more familiar operations with metals and chemicals. The true philosophers knew that external alchemy was merely a reflection of internal processes, and that the commanding of elemental fire began not with furnaces and retorts, but with the proper positioning of the human hands. In the words of the anonymous master who authored the sacred magic of Abramelin, the hand that is raised in proper knowledge becomes the scepter of divine authority, and through it, the elements themselves bow in submission. Even in our modern age, traces of this ancient wisdom persist. The mudras of Eastern traditions, the blessing gestures of various religious practices, and the specific hand positions used in certain forms of energy healing all echo this primordial understanding of the hand as an instrument of spiritual power. Now we must venture into the deeper mysteries, the actual mechanisms by which the human hand becomes a living talisman capable of invoking elemental fire. To understand this transformation, we must first grasp the fundamental principle that underlies all practical magic, the doctrine of correspondences. The architecture of power. Each human hand contains 34 bones, creating a complex geometric matrix that naturally resonates with specific cosmic frequencies. Ancient mystics recognized that this bone structure forms what they called a living mandala, a sacred geometric pattern that serves as a natural focusing device for subtle energies. When properly activated, the hand becomes a three-dimensional yantra, capable of drawing down and directing forces from the elemental realm. The 5 fingers represent the 5 elements in their ascending order of manifestation: earth, pinky; water, ring finger; fire, middle finger; air, index finger; and spirit, thumb. However, for fire invocation, we work with a different correspondence system, one that recognizes the index finger as the primary fire conductor, positioned as it is to point, direct, and command. The pointing finger becomes the lightning rod of the divine will, channeling the celestial fire into manifestation. The energetic anatomy. Within each hand lie 7 primary chakric points, mirror reflections of the 7 major energy centers of the body. These hand chakras, virtually unknown to mainstream energy workers, serve as gateways through which elemental forces can be accessed and directed. The fire chakra, located at the tip of the index finger, glows with an inner light that can be perceived by those whose spiritual vision has been properly developed. Ancient texts describe these energy points as seals of Solomon, barriers that, when properly opened, allow communication with the elemental kingdoms. The fire seal, when activated through the correct ritual procedure, establishes a direct line of communication with what medieval magicians called the salamanders, the consciousness that inhabits and directs the fire element throughout nature. The sacred geometry of ignition. The specific hand position for fire invocation is based on mathematical principles that mirror the golden ratio and the pentagram, nature's most powerful symbols of perfect proportion and elemental balance. When the hands are positioned correctly, They create what advanced practitioners call a resonance chamber, a three-dimensional space where the vibrational frequency matches that of elemental fire. This positioning activates what the Kabbalists termed the Yetzirotic bridge, a connection between the world of formation, where thoughts and emotions exist, and the world of action, where physical manifestation occurs. Through this bridge, the practitioner's will, properly focused and directed through the hand position, can literally call fire into manifestation. The Hermetic principles in action. The operation of this ritual demonstrates all 7 Hermetic principles in perfect harmony. Mentalism. The fire exists first in the mind of the practitioner. Correspondence. The hand position mirrors celestial fire configurations. Vibration. The specific frequency generated by the gesture calls the element. Polarity. The opposing thumbs create the necessary tension for manifestation. Rhythm. The ritual follows the natural breathing cycle of creation. Cause and effect. Proper execution inevitably produces the desired result. Gender. The receptive and projective aspects of the hands unite in perfect balance. The doctrine of signatures. Nature herself provides the key to understanding this mystery through what Paracelsus called the doctrine of signatures, the principle that like attracts like through sympathetic resonance. The branching pattern of the hand, with its extending fingers, mirrors the branching pattern of lightning, of nerve pathways, of river deltas, all manifestations of the same underlying creative force that fire represents. When we position our hands in the sacred configuration, we are literally embodying the shape of divine creative energy. Our flesh becomes a living symbol, our bones become the framework for a supernatural antenna, and our intention becomes the signal that this antenna broadcasts into the elemental realm. As the lightning seeks the earth through the highest point, so does the fire of heaven seek manifestation through the properly prepared hand of the initiate. The alchemical transformation. The practitioner who engages in this ritual undergoes a subtle but permanent alchemical transformation. Each performance of the ritual increases what medieval alchemists called the igneous virtue, the natural affinity for fire that some individuals possess in greater measure than others. Over time, the hands themselves become increasingly sensitive to elemental fire, able to detect its presence, direct its flow, and even generate it spontaneously in moments of great need or spiritual elevation. This transformation is not merely metaphorical. Advanced practitioners report physical changes in their hands, increased warmth, heightened sensitivity, and in some cases the ability to influence temperature through touch alone. These are the outer signs of an inner reality, the gradual awakening of the fire elemental within the human energy system. The ritual we are about to explore is thus not merely a technique for invoking external fire, but a method for awakening the fire within, the sacred flame that illuminates consciousness, burns away illusion, and reveals the true nature of reality itself. Throughout history, masters of the sacred arts have left us glimpses of the profound power contained within these ancient hand rituals. Their testimonies, carefully preserved in the secret archives of mystery schools, reveal the transformative potential that awaits those who approach this knowledge with proper reverence and preparation. The Masters speak. The renowned 16th century physician and mystic Paracelsus wrote in his private journals, "I have witnessed the kindling of flame through the mere positioning of the hands, when the operator had achieved proper rapport with the elemental realm. The fire that springs forth is not of this world, yet manifests within it, serving as a bridge between the seen and unseen." Cornelius Agrippa, in a letter to his student Johannes Trithemius, described an encounter with an unnamed adept who demonstrated the fire ritual. With naught but the proper arrangement of his fingers and a single word of power, he called forth a flame that danced upon his palm without consuming the flesh. This was no mere trickery, for I felt the heat upon my face and witnessed the lighting of candles from this ethereal fire. The anonymous author of the Arbatel of Magic, writing in the late medieval period, recorded, "The gesture of fire, when properly executed by one who has purified his vessel through long practice, becomes a key that unlocks communication with the ignis sacer, the sacred fire that burns at the heart of creation. Through this communion, the practitioner gains not merely the ability to command flame, but to understand the deeper mysteries of transformation and spiritual illumination. Contemporary echoes. Even in our modern era, where such knowledge is often dismissed as superstition, we find remarkable echoes of these ancient teachings. The practice of Reiki, now widely accepted in healing circles, employs specific hand positions to channel what practitioners call universal life energy, a concept remarkably similar to the elemental fire of the ancients. The Tibetan tradition of Tumo, or inner fire meditation, utilizes hand mudras alongside breathing techniques to generate actual heat within the practitioner's body. Western scientists studying these practitioners have documented temperature increases of up to 17 degrees Fahrenheit during these meditations, a phenomenon that remains unexplained by conventional science. Master Chogyam Trungpa, the renowned Tibetan teacher, once said, "The hand is the servant of the mind, but when properly trained, it becomes the master of the elements." Historical manifestations. Medieval chronicles contain numerous accounts of saints and mystics who demonstrated supernatural mastery over fire. Saint Francis of Assisi was reported to have tamed a great fire that threatened the town of Assisi through specific gestures and prayers. Saint John of the Cross described in his mystical writings how proper hand positioning during contemplation could generate what he called the flame of living love, an inner fire that provided both spiritual illumination and physical warmth. The lives of the Desert Fathers are filled with similar accounts. Saint Macarius the Great was said to have kindled fires in the wilderness through prayer and specific hand movements, providing warmth and light for fellow hermits during the harsh Egyptian nights. These were not considered miracles in the modern sense, but rather the natural result of deep spiritual development and proper understanding of elemental principles. The initiated orders. Within the initiated orders of various traditions, these techniques were considered essential knowledge. The Eleusinian mysteries of ancient Greece incorporated fire invocation rituals that required specific hand positions, passed down through generations of hierophants. The Roman Collegium Pontificum maintained secret fire ceremonies where the sacred flame was rekindled through ancient hand techniques when it accidentally died out. More recently, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, founded in the late 19th century, included detailed instruction in elemental hand rituals within their advanced curriculum. Members who progressed to the higher grades were taught what the order called the gesture of the salamander, a hand position for invoking and directing fire elemental forces. Living tradition. This knowledge continues to live within certain circles today. Traditional healers in various cultures maintain practices that clearly derive from these ancient techniques. Hawaiian kahunas use specific hand positions in their fire ceremonies. Hindu priests employ mudras during fire offerings, and certain Christian contemplatives utilize hand prayers that echo the ancient practices. The power of these rituals lies not in mere tradition, but in their connection to fundamental laws of energy and consciousness that remain as valid today as they were thousands of years ago. Each practitioner who approaches this knowledge with sincerity and proper preparation becomes part of an unbroken chain of initiates, stretching back to the very origins of human spiritual awareness. We stand now at the threshold of mystery, having traced the golden thread of fire wisdom from its ancient origins to our present moment. You have glimpsed the profound knowledge that transforms mere flesh and bone into instruments of divine will, and learned how the positioning of your hands can establish conscious contact with the elemental realm of fire. This ritual represents far more than a technique for manipulation of external forces. It is a key to the inner kingdom, a method for awakening the sacred flame that burns within every human heart. Remember, the fire you kindle without is but a reflection of the fire that eternally burns within. The masters who preserved this knowledge through centuries of persecution and suppression did so knowing that humanity would one day be ready to reclaim its birthright as conscious directors of elemental force. That time is now, and you are among the chosen few who will carry this flame forward into the new age of awakening. But this is merely the beginning of your journey into the deeper mysteries. The fire ritual opens doors to realms of knowledge that include the commanding of air, the directing of water, and the mastery of earth itself. Each element offers its own gifts, its own challenges, and its own transformative power for those who approach with proper preparation and unwavering dedication. As you practice this sacred art, remember that with great power comes great responsibility. The fire you have learned to invoke is the same force that burns in the stars, that drives the processes of life itself, and that can either illuminate or consume, depending upon the wisdom and character of the one who wields it. Go forth as a keeper of the sacred flame, carrying within your hands the power to kindle light in a world too long shrouded in darkness. But carry also the wisdom to use this gift in service of the highest good. For this is the true mark of the initiated, not the power they possess, but the wisdom with which they apply it.